Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Okay, Pete, Films and Stuff. A new week, new episodes, new shows, new releases. How are you doing today?
I am great, Ethan. How are you?
I'm also great. I've been super busy the last few evenings catching up on some stuff. We have new drops for Ms. Marvel, For All Mankind, The Boys, Obi Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. Those are the major ones we're watching for the Films and Stuff purposes.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Where do you want to begin? Should we start?
Let's go chronologically. Let's start with Ms. Marvel, yeah.
Ms. Marvel. So, a lot of teen angst.
Of course. Of course.
And
they introduced a potential love triangle third hunky, handsome, foreign boy with the British accent that all girls are going to be swooning over, right?
Yeah, I have to say, being based in Dubai and being from a Muslim family myself, I have to say it is more than refreshing. It's really wonderful to see a show that has a really measured and respectful way of incorporating, Islamic traditions into the show. I'm very, very grateful for that. However, I feel like, again, for at least our demographic, it's too much teen angst, not kind of sure about where they fit into this world for my taste.
I agree. And I understand that because like you, I also appreciate, so while I'm not Muslim, I am South Asian. And so I appreciate and I love the fact that we're getting to see a very honest and true to reality take on what it is like to live in a Pakistani or Indian or Bangladeshi or Sri Lankan-esque family in the West, right? Which is, you have this, the younger generation is more tied to being Western than they are Eastern. And of course, the parents' generation are more tied to being Eastern. And, they're trying to imprint the cultural and religious values upon their children so that tradition continues. I really, really like it. They're doing a wonderful job with it because it is honest and it's refreshing because it's not pandering. It's not, they're not being delicate. They're not walking around eggshells to make sure that no one's getting their feelings hurt or being misrepresented. They're just saying it like it is, and they're depicting it very nicely, I think.
Yeah. And for someone who's in such a conservative household, as you mentioned, there's now a nice little love triangle between her and Bruno and the new guy, Cameron. So she's definitely not at a loss for suitors, it seems.
Yeah. And you knew, again, I think this is a very common TV trope or a common trope in general. We instantly recognized that this was going to be a potential love triangle issue. And B, the moment he spoke and had that English or foreign accent, and, you see him driving around in a Porsche Panamera, which, as a high school student, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but come on, man. In Jersey City, a high school student isn't exactly going to be driving around in a Porsche. But then you realize that, obviously this kid is somehow going to be a bad guy. Because he chooses this quirky, nerdy, slightly out of, sorts, teenage Ms. Marvel to be the girl that he's interested in versus the,
it's kind of too good to be true, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of too good to be true. But and I think, all that teen angst and all the other cultural things aside, that's probably where it gets really interesting is kind of the last, let's say, like minutes or so where we see Agent Cleary, who I don't think we've seen since Spider-Man. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And he gets introduced, and then, of course, Cameron, and is it his auntie?
So he says it's his mom, or I think she was introduced, or the idea is that it's his mother, But then that's the same woman that you see in her flashbacks, when she's put on the bangles and she's channeling her power. And I thought that was implied that might be her grandmother.
Yeah. It's not clear yet, but obviously something's happening. And as you mentioned, Cameron chose out Kamala for obviously he recognized something in her. Either he's there to protect her or he's there to manipulate her. Not really clear yet, right? But something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But can you remind me, what is it with Agent Cleary? He was, what was his role in Spider-Man?
So he works for Damage Control.
Yes.
Which was effectively this organization created by the government and kind of funded by Tony Stark, which was there to kind of clean up any mess that was caused by these superhumans and super monsters and super villains and super good guys who were fighting, right? Because you effectively have all this devastation, especially after the attack on New York, where you have Chitauri weapons lying around, buildings falling apart. So the idea was that the Avengers took liability for that and said, listen, we're going to create this, we're going to fund this thing called Damage Control, and it's going to be independently run, but funded by Tony Stark effectively, or at least the Avengers or something like that. And any alien tech or any superpower tech or any buildings that fall apart, that's what this organization is meant to kind of look after.
The DODC. Yep.
Yeah. So that's I think I don't know if they ever say it specifically in this show or in Spider-Man, but it's implied that's the company that's doing it.
It can't. No. In this show, at least in Ms. Marvel, I mean, I remember Agent Cleary himself, but he had like the DODC, not the jumpsuit, but like the tag on his shirt or on his jacket.
Sure.
Right? And I remember him, he was in Spider-Man, and I thought he was also in one of the earlier Spider-Mans. Maybe...
Well, the Damage Control was mentioned in the first Spider-Man, where we see Michael Keaton
Yes, it was with Michael Keaton. Exactly.
Yeah. So because their Damage Control was the one that kind of came in and broke up their organization to say, hey, from now on, Damage Control is going to take care of that. So you're going to lose the contract. Because Michael Keaton's company had the contract to kind of clean up after the Avengers.
That's right.
And it was taken away by Damage Control because they said, now we're here. That's our job, not yours. But I don't remember him in there. I don't remember Stewie being in there.
No, I don't remember Stewie being in there either.
Yeah.
All right. So where do you think this is going with Cameron and his mom?
So I think that effectively Cameron is no longer really a running mate in this love triangle thing. I thought they were going to pan it. I thought they were going to hold that reveal for a few more episodes.
No, it went
but
fast.
They did it then and there, which I was fine with because, again, it's a very common trope.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's any longer a part of that quote-unquote love triangle. I think that... and honestly, I don't know where this mother/grandmother figure is going to play into it. But it's clear that she's obviously the bad guy, right?
Yeah. Is it clear? I mean, I kind of feel like there's something with Kamala's mother and like she has an aunt or something, and there's kind of like a good sibling, bad sibling relationship there, right? And her mother's trying to kind of protect her because they mention this thing about, like the sister like embarrassed the family and humiliated them. And then they went a little bit into, the story about like the train station and how someone got lost, but then they followed the stars to find their way back to the family again. There was a lot of kind of like hints that at the time you knew they were hints, but you weren't really sure what the question was that they were, providing an answer to, right?
Exactly.
So
I expect that that's what we're going to get the rest of the 4 episodes. I think it's 6 in total that they're doing. So I think those are the questions that'll be answered over the next 4 episodes or so.
And that's also a little bit of a blessing and the curse of a Marvel show, which is there's no such thing as throwaway dialogue. I mean, occasionally there is, but more often than not, everything that they talk about, you kind of lull yourself to sleep when you're watching like just kind of like a family at the dinner table, like chatting back and forth. Usually that's just kind of like throwaway, like conversation, right? But for Marvel shows, it's always, there's no wasted dialogue really. You know, everything is said for a reason, and you have to kind of like catch on to those things and refer back to them later.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it is a blessing and a curse, because sometimes, you know, you don't want to have to pay super good attention to every single word that's being said, or, you know, you don't, because you're afraid you're going to miss out on some reference that, you know, could potentially come up in the future, or a throwback to something that happened 5 episodes ago on another TV show, you know, so.
But you're right about it, which is in the Marvel universe, there's really no coincidences. You know, every relationship, every introduction, you know, it's made for a reason. So, I mean, I think that we've kind of been trained, and everyone who watches a lot of Marvel, you know, shows and movies has been trained that, you know, whenever you see, you know, like you said, Cameron, all right, like, it's not just a coincidence, you know, and even like Bruno, for example, Bruno may be, you know, planted somehow as well, right? Now we see that he doesn't know if he wants to go to Caltech. He's starting to avoid it, you know. It may be that he's also there planted by someone as well. You never really know with Marvel, but there's no coincidences, basically.
Yeah, and at first I was like, oh, maybe he's doing it because, you know, he's in love with Kamala and he doesn't want to admit it, blah, blah, blah. And then he sees this guy come in and he's like, well, screw it. There's nothing left for me here. I'm going to go to Caltech. And it's, again, that's the more teenage angsty, you know, drama side of it, which is, again, while it may not hit for you and me, that's obviously because we're no longer teenagers and we're not really, you know.
We have no angst.
Yeah.
Pete, we have no angst.
And the angst we have certainly isn't about, you know, another guy or another girl in our lives. You know, that's not our thing anymore.
It's about people liking our podcast. Are we getting enough likes? Are we getting enough downloads?
It keeps me up at night. So
who's wearing our hoodie?
So yes, that's Ms. Marvel. Not good, not bad at all. I'm still enjoying it, even though it's obviously not. It caters to me as a Marvel fan, but it doesn't cater to me as a person someone in their particular maybe age or even gender demographic.
I agree.
But it still does, you know, it is something I still want to keep watching. And so again, at the moment, it's a watch. It's not a must subscribe, but certainly keep watching it.
Keep watching it. All right, on to the next.
So let's
What's on your list?
Same network.
Same network.
Almost same time zone.
Same time
Obi-Wan.
zone. Oh.
So Obi-Wan, listeners, you know, I think Ethan and I have lots to talk about.
Where to begin?
When we first watched it, we thought we were going to do one episode at the end of it. So we did one episode having covered episodes 1 and 2. Then we thought we'd do one covering episodes 3 and 4. And then we thought we'd do one for the series finale. But I think that we have a lot of thoughts on it. It's not all positive. Some positive, but for me right now, teetering on mostly negative or more negative than positive.
I mean, on the one hand, you know, we know how Obi-Wan ends, right? So so everything is already a little bit predetermined, and we already have something in our mind in terms of how Obi-Wan should be. And I think that's kind of the challenge, is that my perspective of Obi-Wan is as very old, wise, seasoned, pragmatic. You know, like he doesn't get rattled easily. He's got all this wisdom. You know, he carries himself.
He's connected to the Force.
Carries himself with like this great gravitas. You know, and this Obi-Wan is like so insecure, and he's snapping at everyone, and he's not really a leader. And this isn't at all on you know Ewan McGregor at all. You know, it's not the acting; it's the character as written, and I'm just kind of frustrated. Why, you know, where does he go from being a 45-year-old, you know, kind of Jedi who's, you know, now kind of taking a more active role and no longer being a hermit? How does he go from that guy to the seasoned guy who's kind of like 75 when we see him in A New Hope? And I'm not getting there. You know, I thought we were supposed to see this this odyssey. But I'm kind of seeing the opposite, and I'm really just kind of frustrated by his behavior and by his poor decision making more than anything, right?
Yeah. I think we're at a position where I'm happy to see Ewan McGregor because I like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, but this is not the Obi-Wan. What's interesting is this is not the Obi-Wan of the prequel trilogy, and this is not the Obi-Wan of A New Hope.
Yeah, you're right.
And this transition between episode 3 to episode 4 is very jarring.
Yeah.
And it's very unsteady and it's not clear. It's very murky at the moment. And because of that, I think that's probably what's causing a lot of, not indifference and not disdain, but it's a little surprising to see because you left him who was, when we last saw him at the end of episode 3, he was very calm. He was very collected. He understood that there was a certain mission they had to do. That's fine. Yeah. And then when we pick up with him in episode 4 in A New Hope, again, same thing, very calm, very collected, full of gravitas, like you just said. Yeah. Fine. The in-between journey, I don't think Disney has done a very good job of explaining why he was broken, how he was broken, and of course, we as viewers, because we're fan of Star Wars and because, our natural inclination is to defend it when we can, is to then start contorting ourselves to kind of fit the narrative that we're seeing on screen when I don't think that's necessary. I think that with a little bit of writing and a little bit of, and we talked about this offline, Ethan, but I think, and we'll present this to you guys next week, but we have a few ideas that I think would have been better in terms of storyline, in terms of, if you want to do 6 to 8 episodes in between to transition between episode 3 to episode 4, I think we have a few better ideas as to what they could have done for Obi-Wan.
I think my problem is, though, the timeline. We've kind of gone through this, which is right now, Leia is 10, 12 years old, we think, right?
Yes, she's 10.
Which means, in theory, we're probably how many years away from A New Hope?
10.
Another 10, right? So she's kind of 22 in A New Hope, right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's maybe my problem. Like, I'm okay with this happening now, but it doesn't take us to what happens for the next 10 years, right? Like, Leia's been kidnapped. I think, and I said this to you before, I think this should have been 10 years in the future, where we could go directly from the kidnapping as a young adult to then she becomes kind of like the leader of the rebels. I'm just not clear how she's laying low for the next 10 years. I'm also not clear how, Obi-Wan is going back to, where is he, Tatooine?
He is, yeah.
Right? How he's going back, and Luke never sees him, right? Luke just in A New Hope, Luke says, hey, that crazy old guy, Ben Kenobi? Right? Like, he goes just back to laying low for 10 years, and Vader doesn't find him. Right? The Inquisitors don't find him.
This is the thing, that there's a lot of problems because this...
Yeah. That timeline doesn't work for me.
I get that Vader doesn't know that these are his kids. It makes sense to me because, he's full of rage. He's only looking for Obi-Wan. That kind of flies with me. What doesn't fly with me, and I think this is for me the source of consternation, is Reva.
Yes.
Right? You have this Inquisitor. It's, spoiler alert, although I think everyone saw this coming. It's understood that she was a youngling when Order 66 happened. Mm-hmm. And so, she's like mid-20s at this point. She was there when Anakin Skywalker slaughtered everyone.
Yep.
And she's now working for Anakin Skywalker. And I know a few episodes ago we said that, maybe everyone knows that, Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. But now I get the feeling, and again, it's not explicitly told, but I believe that no one knows that he's Darth Vader. That Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. Yeah. I think that's something closely guarded to her. he obviously knows who she is. She's, you get to see some excessive use of the Force by Darth Vader, which I like. This is like the golden age of Darth Vader's powers, and I love that because it gives a lot of context as to why Darth Vader is one of the most feared men in the galaxy, which we didn't really see in episodes 4, 5, and 6, right? It was always understood that, everyone's afraid of Darth Vader. Why? Because he's got a laser sword and he kind of waves people around and chokes them? No, because he's got enough power to literally hold down a spaceship, to tear off its hull, to fight another lightsaber with just using his hands. These are, for me, okay. I don't mind that. It's a bit of a power fantasy. Fine. But the Reva character,
but can I jump in there? Can I jump in there? I understand the power of Vader, right? I mean, we see him hold and ground a ship. I'm okay with that power, except for the fact that there's all these other scenes in this show, not even going into, A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, right? Empire Strikes Back, remember, we see them on Hoth, and the Millennium Falcon gets away.
Yep.
Vader couldn't hold the ship, and that's the problem, is that I don't like that he can hold a ship now, but then this other ship somehow gets away. So yeah. Vader's not strong enough to say, oh, I'll just bring that one down too. We saw the prior episode where he's in this village, right? And he's just kind of like walking in the dirt, trying to find everybody. If he's so powerful, why can't he just like lift up every single rickety little shack and see who's kind of cowering where, right? Like, if you're going to give him a superpower, you have to be consistent and think through how that superpower impacts everything, right?
I agree on the practical side, but I think you're taking what would be effectively a real world use case. Like if I had the Force and if I were a bad guy, I would do that as well because it's the path of least resistance, right? But I think in terms of you have to now apply movie logic to it or TV logic to it, which is to say, well, of course, if he did that, then like the show would be over in 5 minutes, not in 6 episodes.
Then don't give him that power. I mean, they created this problem, right? Again, the first thing I thought about was, do you remember, we all remember, the Battle of Hoth, Empire Strikes Back.
That's right.
Remember, everyone gets into Millennium Falcon, that little gun comes out, it starts shooting people, right? The stormtroopers set up this little cannon on a tripod. Vader is right there. And he could not even try to ground the Millennium Falcon. That was not a power that he had.
Yeah.
So why?
It was not a power that the writers thought he could have at that time. Yes.
So why are you writing in this power now? If you're writing forward, it's okay, but you're not. You've already got something that's limiting him, and that really, really bothered me. Maybe irrationally.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I give those kinds of things a little bit of a pass because, you have to remember that was also written by George Lucas, who's not exactly the best writer, even though he's got a great mind. I give all those kinds of things a little bit of a pass because I get what they're trying to do narratively, right? Which is to say, you don't want him to also... You want to have a movie that continues. Otherwise, again, episode 5, Empire Strikes Back would have ended in 15 minutes, in that first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I get it. But again, those are...
You're more frustrated by Reva, and I hear you on the Reva point, which is she flipped very, very fast, and
none of it made sense to me.
It does not make sense.
Her character, who is a youngling who was supposed to be a Jedi, which means she was supposed to be light side, is now brainwashed and becomes an Inquisitor. But really, she's not brainwashed because she's been kind of like lurking in the shadows and playing the bad guy as an act to do, Vader's bidding to get close to him so that she can kill him. But at the same time, she's done some really horrific stuff. They literally lynched a guy in the first episode and hung a Jedi, right, in front of this town square. She's burning innocent people with her lightsaber and has to be held back by other Inquisitors.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a limit,
I
right?
agree.
There's also a limit. And then one conversation with Obi-Wan in person reveals that, oh, this is all an act, which first of all, obviously it's not.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? It's just, and it got to a point where she's fighting with Vader, who's obviously going to destroy her.
Yeah.
And she's screaming and she's yelling and she's just like, there's zero nuance. She just got reduced to this angry Inquisitor who's yelling at the supervillain. I
mean, the whole thing was, I agree with you. I think there were two problems that I had. The first was, I mean, that's a very poorly thought out plan, which is, hey, in order to get revenge to this guy, I have to get close to him. So I'm going to just do the same atrocities that I'm angry at him with, but it's for the greater good. It doesn't, I mean, as a Jedi, that doesn't sit well with me. Two, remember there was an episode, like her whole point is I want to get close to Vader, right? Okay, fine. Maybe that's the case. Remember when she was named the Grand Inquisitor and the guy just suddenly in his pocket has the Grand Inquisitor pin and put it on her lapel? She was right there next to Vader, right? When she kneeled down, why didn't she just take her saber and like try to stab him or cut off his leg or something, right? She's saying, well, I got to get a little bit closer, you know? Like,
I got to be a little bit more on his good turn.
I mean, like,
on his good side.
The whole thing is, as you said, it's clumsy. It doesn't make sense. And that's, I think, the problem with her is that, you know, she was a very good bad guy, actually. I was actually happier when she was a bad guy.
If she stayed a bad guy and had a little bit of a nuance, and again, we're going to come up to, I have an idea which I think would have been much better utilized for, and tune in next week for it, but as to what they could have done for this as the plot.
Oh man, you're even making me wait?
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. The idea is that we want to entice listeners, right?
Tune in next week.
Tune in. Tell 10 of your friends to tune in too, because trust me, I think you'll want to hear this.
Pete, let me ask you a question. In terms of lightsaber damage, in A New Hope, we see, so two things. We saw Luke lose his hand to a lightsaber.
Yep.
We saw Obi-Wan died from a lightsaber, although somehow Obi-Wan just evaporated, right? Yep. We saw in the episode where we saw Reva strike down the original Grand Inquisitor, she basically put the lightsaber through his stomach, right?
Yep.
And for me, a laser going through your stomach, he was not in a friendly planet. There was not like a medical drone or robot nearby. Yep. I mean, I'm really not sure how he lived through that, right? She gets stuck by a lightsaber, right?
And we know she's not dead.
And Darth Vader, who I think in the history of this show has never shown anyone mercy, right? He shoots to kill, basically, right?
Yeah.
Since when does he show mercy? So I'm just a little bit, this is one of the points that makes me so frustrated, you know, and it's because we're huge Star Wars fan. The lore means something. Since when do you get stabbed in the middle of the chest or a stomach by a lightsaber? And it's like, well, that's a non-fatal wound. You'll be okay. Right?
Yeah. So, and again, this is me doing, you know, a Cirque du Soleil style contortionist way of getting around it, because I'm with you 100%. Is remember in episodes 7, 8, 9, we learn that Force users are able to use the Force to heal themselves, or at least to, you know what I mean? We see that literally happen, right? So I think that's what proto-Force users, which is what I'm going to call them, which obviously it's not the case, is that people who are Force users, good or bad, are able to survive wounds that would normally kill a normal person because the Force is there, good or bad. I'm with you. I can see the look of incredulity in your eyes, but I'm 100% with you. It's again, it's me just trying to minimize the cognitive dissonance that we have.
Yeah.
But yes, there's only so much gymnastics you and I can do before we have to start calling a spade a spade.
That's exactly it. But I mean, that's my frustration. I mean, again, it's not like it could have been a flesh wound. You know, Vader just grazed her and she has a shoulder injury or something, right? I mean, like, he stabbed her, right? And Vader never, right? He's never shown anyone mercy, right?
We saw him snap a civilian's neck with the Force.
Yes. And now this lady who tried to kill him, who he saw it coming, all these other things, he's just like, nah, stay there. I know you're going to heal yourself. It's okay with me. You know, like, the whole thing just doesn't sit right with me. It's not worth going over ad nauseum, but I think that's why you and I are taking Obi-Wan, which when we saw this show coming out, we were like bursting with excitement, anticipation. I was
trying to be cautiously optimistic, but of course I couldn't help myself. It's Obi-Wan. It was Ewan McGregor.
And again,
I was super excited.
Yeah, and this isn't Minions 2. This isn't, you know, like one of these movies where, you know, the kids aren't going to like pick up on the details. Star Wars fans are by definition irrational, fanatical nitpickers. Yeah. You know this is what's going to happen, right? That's why you make a cajillion dollars when you release these shows, is because we love them so much. So hire someone who's seen a Star Wars before and has your, you know, vice president of common sense and say, hold on, guys, that doesn't make sense. You know, change that
having
somehow.
Said that, I petition that Ethan and I become the new vice presidents of common sense.
Yeah, we would love to do that, but and especially because Jon Favreau is involved in this, right?
Yeah, I don't know what his involvement is with Obi-Wan. I know that he's full-time on... I think he's probably an executive producer. I don't think he's a writer, and I don't think he's a director.
He doesn't have any writing credits.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And the director is only Deborah Chow. Only Deborah Chow. But
so
still,
I don't think that he's actually involved.
Yeah, but still, I'm just really surprised by this. Anyway,
look, let's save our you know, maybe episode 6 turns it all around, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. It's at the moment, I have to admit that it's looking like a slow motion car crash.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll hold off on final thoughts until next week, where we will, I think, take a full episode to really dissect the entire season and tell you what we think went wrong, what we think went right, what we think they should have done instead.
All right. Shall we turn to something?
Yes. What's that?
What do you want?
Why don't we talk about 2 of our more uplifting shows?
Yes.
Let's talk about The Boys first.
Oh, man.
So, Boys is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm liking what they're doing with it. There's not much to say in terms of, you know,
I think there's
I don't have any critiques at all.
I think there's a lot to say, because I think that now that they've introduced temporary V, right?
Yeah.
You're starting to really get to the existential questions about power and corruption, right? And you see that Mother's Milk is the only dude who really says, and maybe Serge is really, Frenchie is the only guy who really says, you guys are doing the exact same thing that we came together to fight, right?
He's the only one drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Because he believes that the ends don't justify the means, whereas Butcher... I mean, with Huey, it's slightly different. I think he's doing it because, you know, he's always felt like a coward and he's always felt like a wimp. He's always felt like the little guy. Yeah. And this is a chance for him to kind of get even with the bullies that he's been bullied by in his life, right? Yeah. Metaphorically.
Yeah.
And I think, whereas Butcher, I think, is like, listen, the ends justify the mean. I'm doing this because I have to, because we have to level the playing field. Which is a twist, right? Because between seasons 2 and 3, the whole point was that they had created this governmental organization that was stopping them peacefully.
Mm. I have to say, if I had to take a stance, I agree with Huey and Butcher. You know, and Huey, I think Huey's kind of, I agree, doing it a little bit because he was always kind of like the weakling. He couldn't even open like jars without Starlight. But I think that, you know, Huey also came to the realization after he saw Victoria, right? Victoria Newman, who's really a soup, right? I think he came to the realization, like, we will never be able to win like this. You know, he's really tried to go through the proper process, the proper channels. He was a believer in the system, you know, change from within and all those other kind of cliches. And he saw, like, look, it's just stacked against us. Even the person who's leading the agency is a soup. Like, we can't possibly win, right? And it would probably be okay if Starlight wasn't, you know, in danger or being basically harassed. So I see Huey's point, and I kind of see Butcher's point, which is we got to fight fire with fire. So I have to say I'm really kind of on their side, even though I see this going wrong, and I see obviously now that Soldier Boy is reintroduced. You know, we're obviously leading up to a big battle climax, right?
Yeah, and I think this is, and we talked about it a few episodes ago. I think you know, we have a lot of places where it could go, but I think this is going to be the one, you know, because you don't want to lose Homelander. And I think that, you know, because he's such an evil guy. Yeah. He's like the Joffrey Baratheon, right? He's the guy that everyone rails against and rallies against as viewers. So I think it's the twist to make it interesting. And again, this comes by neither of us have read the comics. Yeah. I imagine what they're going to end up doing is having, you know, Soldier Boy is going to kind of get corrupted and go off on the deep end, and it's going to have
becomes the good guy.
Or rather, he becomes the guy that that Butcher has to reluctantly make a temporary alliance with. Yeah. Where he's taking temporary V, Homelander is there, and it's going to have to become a 2 versus 1 situation.
Yeah, I think Homelander somehow maybe doesn't become a good guy, but he's on the right side of this. Soldier Boy,
at least on this one, exactly.
Yeah, but can you help me understand? There's something that I missed. So Soldier Boy was captured in Nicaragua, right? In 1985. That's the lore, right? We thought he died, but he was actually captured by the Russians. The Russians basically like did all these like experiments on him. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I understood.
But somehow they still kind of kept him. He never escaped. They did all these things, and somehow they altered his powers. And then when the boys went to try to find this super weapon, they found out there is no super weapon, but in fact, Soldier Boy is alive. They inadvertently released him. Now he went back, and he's somehow angry at his ex. What is this all about? This I do not get.
So I think she set him up, right? The implication was that he got captured by the Russians, and because of her, I think she was the one who kind of teed off the Russians as to where Soldier Boy was going to be in Nicaragua for the capture. That's my feeling. I don't know 100% again, but it was implied that she basically sold him out to the Russians.
All right. So Crimson Countess was kind of dating Soldier Boy. Yep. She sold him out. That's how he was captured. Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess we're going to go see what happens, right? Because Soldier Boy is somehow now going to be trying to get some revenge at Vought. Revenge against maybe Homelander.
So that's the thing is I think that he's made a temporary he's made an alliance with Butcher, right? Because Butcher was like, listen, I freed you from the Russians, and I got I got your girlfriend, your ex-girlfriend tied down there, and I've set her up for you.
You're right.
And he says, all I want in return is for you to take care, or to you to help me with a problem we've got. And of course, we don't see that negotiation, but at the end of the episode, you see the two of them walk away, and Huey says, we have to do this.
Got it.
I think that the negotiation was, you're going to help me kill Homelander.
Got it. All right. Let's see where it turns out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, again, when I say that there isn't much to talk about, not in the sense that there isn't a lot happening. I mean in the sense that the show is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's got anything that, you want to change dramatically. There's always a few niggles and small things that you'd always want to change.
Is there going to be a
dramatic
season? This is season 3 or 4?
This is season 3.
Is there going to be a season 4? Do we know?
Yeah, I imagine there is, but I don't know how long the comic book run is.
Okay.
So I imagine that this will be a part of it. So that's The Boys.
Yep.
And our favorite show, I don't think anyone will disagree. It's
For All Mankind.
Where I am now officially on Team Margot Must Go with you.
Yeah. I mean, last week, you remember, I went on a very small rant, but it was a rant about how Margot, as a government employee, would not have a piano in her office.
I am rescinding her grand piano leeway.
I thought that was not only unrealistic, I thought it was just a sign of excess. And now we see in this most recent episode, maybe I'm connecting dots where they don't belong, but that piano to me symbolizes how she has lost the plot and she is only a power-hungry bureaucrat, interest in anything other than herself. I am super, super, super upset with Margot. Not so much upset with how she tried to put some oversight over Molly Cobb. I think, to be honest, the idea of having kind of like a advisory board or panel to identify, astronaut assignments is probably a good idea. It's not right to have it under one person's guise, but it's the way that she went about it, which I thought was very clumsy. And the fact that she just up and fired Molly, I thought was super,
on the spot.
Yeah, on the spot. And Margot, who's
unbelievable.
Margot's also the person who put Alita into space. When you talk about unilateral decisions, right? She took someone who's an engineer, who probably didn't deserve that job in the first place. Remember, she was having behavioral problems at the time. She wasn't getting along with Bill at the time and insulted Bill and made fun of Bill. She brought her back in, right? And now she fires Molly for the exact same thing, which is making a unilateral decision when she did the same thing with Alita and said, hey, you're going to the moon.
Yep.
Very, very, very disappointing by
I am firmly on Team Margot Must Get Spaced. And I think this is all going to come back and bite her in the ass because this is all great. I want her to accumulate all this power and position only because there's going to be a massive fall from grace when she gets exposed that her crush / boyfriend is actually a KGB agent or an infiltrator.
Yeah. So, but there's something really interesting about this, right? So, do you think this is going to go into a 3-way race for space? Or do you think there's another deal to be made here? Either Helios with the Russians or the Americans with the Russians to beat Helios?
Yeah, I think this is what's going to happen. I think that this is where we are is, as we rightly predicted, by the way, whoever was going to lead the mission for NASA at the end of the day, the other person was going to go and work for the private we sector. Called it last week, and we nailed it. Because that's exactly what happens. Mm-hmm. You've got the bookish, by the book, by the numbers, Danielle leading the NASA mission in 96. And then you've got... this is another problem. And, 90% of the problem is because it's Karen, 10% because it's also implausible.
Oh, man,
how do you have a hotelier who's now running the show at Helios or leading the show at Helios? I have so many problems with Karen.
I love Karen. I can't
stand her.
By the way, can I just make an aside? Do you know that, remember, Karen is also the ex-wife of Butcher in The Boys? Boom.
Is she?
Huh? How about that? How about
crazy.
that?
Crazy. Now, if they can somehow make that happen to her in this this series, I'll be fine.
I love Karen, although when she was, they have this scene where she's at the office and Danny comes into the office, right?
Oh man.
So I was unhappy with because she started that problem. And she said, "Hey, why did you play that song?" Right? She opened up the issue right there. And I thought that was the first time I was really, really upset about it because she should have just avoided
Let it go.
And then she gets mad at him.
Yeah. And then he starts stalking her, which is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
And so but now I'm on board with this triangle, okay? Because now things are getting spicy. You've got Danielle and Danny is now also going to be selected for the mission.
Yes.
And what he doesn't know is that Ed is the one who selected him for that mission.
But Kelly's got to get in there. First of all, I hate Kelly. But
I don't know how they're going to use Kelly for this. I don't like the fact because what's going to happen is that she's going to get on the NASA mission too, and that's going to create tension for Ed.
Yes.
And so going back to your original question, I think we're back on track. I think what's going to happen now is that the Russians are going to somehow, using information from Margot, they're going to fast track their mission so that they can beat Helios. NASA under pressure is going to...
Pete, that is so important. Are you saying that Margot, in an effort to undermine Helios, is going to give information to Russia because she'd rather have Russia win than Helios?
That's questionable. I think what's going to happen because I don't see her doing that in her personality. I don't see that. What I do see is that inadvertently, because she's kind of been this bookish girl who doesn't have anyone like her, who genuinely likes this guy, and he genuinely likes her too, right? And Sergei ends up taking her information and using that to launch them alongside Helios. She gets found out, it becomes a problem, and then somehow Alita is able to save the day so that they all launch together in 94, and then it becomes a true race, right? And then they all launch in 1994, and then, of course, in their haste, either Helios starts falling apart, or either NASA starts falling apart, and then, of course, it's going to be the private-public partnership to save each other to then unite to beat Moscow. That's what I think is going to happen. I think they're teeing it up so that right now it's going to be a three-man race, and that three-man race becomes a two-person race, and that two-person race then is effectively USA versus Russia again.
Okay. There's one loose end that you need to wrap up, though. Where does Ellen fall into this? Is Margot going to get canned?
That's a great question.
I feel like Ellen cannot be president. Just because it kind of writes her out, and no one wants to see that. It writes her off the show,
and I don't want to see that either, right? And it's great because you now see she's still living with her beard. She's got a kid. They've either adopted or whatever.
Weird. That's so weird. I didn't need
weird, but and obviously it's not something I can relate to. But you can imagine that's probably what happened so often in that era. It must have, right? Where you're just like, for the sake of propriety, I am going to marry someone who I'm not physically attracted to because I'm gay, but she's gay too. And for the sake of societal things, and because she's running for president, we better have a kid. Because otherwise the questions will arise, why don't you have a kid? It's always about public perception.
So,
and I think what's going to happen is like, they do that thing, right? She's found her running mate who's like this super evangelical guy. Yeah. I imagine he's going to find out that she's gay. And even though he's like, says that he's going to do whatever he can to help her win, he's going to secretly undermine her because he finds out she's gay. And that's how they both lose the running for presidency.
Dude, can I make it even more crazy? Can I just jump the shark?
Definitely.
Her evangelical running mate starts to have an affair with her fake husband, Larry.
Oh my God. How crazy would that be? And he's blackmailing
like they meet each other on like Tinder, whatever the Tinder equivalent is, right? And he finds out that it's Larry. He leaks that news to get Ellen kicked off the ticket. He elevates to running for president. She needs a new job. And then she takes over NASA, or she takes over Helios. Or something, right? But that,
I don't imagine
that to
if
me
that's
is,
the case. If they go that way, I don't see
Yeah.
her working at NASA because the government wouldn't want to be associated with her.
Maybe
And
that's right.
this like super idealistic version of like this WeWork enterprise that these guys have created with Helios,
it's like Zappos.
which by the way,
It's like Zappos.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? Oh yeah, it is exactly like Zappos, right?
Yeah.
We're a flat organization, no offices. What a bunch of hooey, by the way.
I agree. I mean, those things always work well until there's like a problem, and then it's like, okay, well, who wants to take over this problem? No volunteers.
Yeah.
Who's qualified to do it?
First significant, or even the first insignificant speed bump, and the whole thing falls apart. It's a house of cards.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine, is that she ends up working with Helios, and then I imagine somehow Molly's going to come into Helios as well, because she's also now unemployed. So it's going to become like the old school Zeke way of thinking versus the new school Margot way of thinking at NASA. I imagine that's how it's going to be.
I do not like the idea, though, of Helios cooperating with NASA. I mean, I think that it would be more interesting to have either the Russians and the Americans working together, or Helios working with the Russians, or a different country. I mean, just
see
just
Helios
in terms
allying.
in terms of drama value.
In terms of this guy who's leading Helios, I see him as going, listen, we're not at war with Russia. We're a profit-driven corporation. Whichever organization helps us achieve our profits, we couldn't care less. It's either America, it's Russia, we're indifferent. So in that regard, I'm with you. I see Helios turning to Russia before I see them turning to America.
Don't you think that's kind of strange, though, to have a profit-seeking company be like this flat collective? You know?
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Seems like they should be a not-for-profit, right?
It's a total hooey, hippie commune concept, which, you know, and I think
it's communist. That's exactly communism, right?
Right.
That's why they probably align better with Russia then.
I think, and this is maybe, you know, Ethan and Pete bring their own real world baggage into this, but you know, we're both corporate guys. We've worked in big businesses. We understand none of this would last a day, right? Things would fall into anarchy overnight if you had this kind of structure.
All right. Can I go a step further? What if the cooperation isn't on getting to Mars? It's the return, right? Like, what if, you know, they kind of each land on Mars and one person's first, and then there's like a big problem, kind of like there was on the moon. And that's what like drives the cooperation.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and as you rightly said, I think we've seen that on the moon already. With Jamestown, we saw that.
Yeah. I have to say, I think that I still think we need a few more characters to be introduced. I mean, this guy Dev, right, was I don't know if he's a great introduction, but he's new. I don't like Kelly at all. I do like Danny as an actor. I mean, I feel like they made him unnecessarily a little bit weird. You know, Danielle's taking a bigger role.
Ed's back to being single. I think they're keying up that potential love triangle again.
They're going to tee that off again. And essentially, I think Ed and Karen get back together, and then Danny inserts himself, and it's just going to be ugly somehow.
And I don't want to see Karen getting with anyone except maybe an airlock into space.
You know who we haven't heard? Dude, I love Karen. You know who we haven't heard from in a while is Ellen's old Pam. Remember Pam Horton?
Yeah, I don't know if she comes back. I imagine she might play a role because, you know, the opposition research, right?
Somehow her presidential bid has to get sidetracked.
Yeah, either derailed or, you know, because they even alluded to it. They're already down 20 points. They're down 6 points. So it could just be that it has to get derailed in a way that makes her still lose.
Yeah.
I just don't see her dropping out of the campaign. I see her losing the campaign.
It's kind of weird, though. Don't you think that she should be up by 20 points? Like, it should be like this landslide where she's destroying Clinton, And then they find out that she's actually a lesbian and her husband's homosexual or something, right? Like, it would have been better that like she was like the shoo-in, just kind of like we saw with Gary Hart, right? And Monkey Business, you know? It would have been better that she's like, because that's really revisionist history. Like Clinton would have lost, right? This lady would have been the first female president. She was running on this very conservative platform, and then suddenly everything falls apart.
By the way, maybe that's what happens. Maybe that's, you know, she's now got this running mate who's this ultra-conservative guy who rallies his base, which is what they're basically talking about, right? So maybe now in the next episode we find out that, oh, by the way, you know, she is now up 20 points or up 50 points or whatever it is, and she's a shoo-in to be the next president, only for all of this to kind of fall apart on her, or, you know, her running mate finds out and tries to leverage that. And so she doesn't want to. So she's a woman of integrity. So she says, no, I'm going to leak it out myself. You know, before it comes out in the press, you know, similar to what we saw in real world with Rebel Wilson in Australia just now. I imagine something like that happens or potentially happens. I don't know.
Let me ask you another question. What do you think is the likelihood that Dev and Helios are actually not this benevolent organization, but they're actually trying to sabotage space travel?
Oh, I don't even know if they're about to sabotage it. I think that they've got industrial views on what they want to do in Mars. I think they want to exploit the planet. Oh. I think that they're going to be your stereotypical corporation, which is like, we're going to go in there and we're going to, you know, absolutely strip mine the crap out of Mars. And that's what they're going to figure out, you know, that this is the ulterior. There has to be an ulterior motive, right? Why is Helios going up there? Profit. Where's the profit coming from if they're not setting up space tourism? Question mark.
Yeah. The two people we haven't seen this season, remember when we ended season 2, it was Ed and Bird Dog, remember?
Yeah, the Tim? Air Force guy.
And then there was like a lady. What was her name?
I can't remember, but she was the co-pilot.
Yeah.
He was the weapons expert, and she was the co-pilot.
We haven't seen either of those two, and I thought they would have a more...
I thought they were going to tee them up to be the guys who run the Mars mission, or who are co-pilots on the Mars mission. I'm surprised by that, to be honest.
I agree, because we lost 2 characters, right? I mean, generally you need to introduce more characters as it goes on. We lost, you know, Gordo, my favorite, obviously. Yeah. We lost Trace. You know, what did we gain? We gained a little bit more Danny. Kelly, a little bit more Danny, and a little bit more Alita, right?
Yep.
So, and Ellen is minimized. Okay, Danielle is more. You know, we haven't seen more of Bill. You know, we lost Pam. So, I mean, I feel like we need another 1 or 2 people to be introduced here.
Yep. Yeah, and I imagine they will be. I think out of the 10 episodes, we've only seen 2 so far.
Yeah. But I'm loving this show. It's got to be
in the next third and fourth show. It's so good. Listeners, it's so good. It's so, you know, a show is good when we are this passionate about certain characters, and when we've got 10 different ideas as to where the show could be going, and we still don't have an idea.
Yeah. I think that's the brilliance of this show, is that they've really written it in a way that we just talked about 5, 6, 7 different scenarios, right?
Yeah.
All of them are very compelling, dramatic, scientific, you know, ideas. And I think that's the brilliance of a show, is that you've got to give yourself that optionality. Whereas, for example, Obi-Wan, I know that we know the end game, but like, there's nothing really happening, right? There's no like, hey, what about this? And maybe they'll be in alliance, and maybe this will be this, right? We're not seeing anything in some of these other shows that the way that we see it in For All Mankind. I think that's why it's such a good show, is not just the acting, not just the writing, not just, sometimes I think the sets are a little bit poor, but the plot, right? Keeping it open-ended and keeping you guessing without being unrealistic, I think is exceptional. Similar to The Boys, right? The Boys, not as open-ended, but still there's some questions in terms of, you know, how things are going to shake out.
Yes, I agree.
And The Boys, again, they introduced new people, right? Now there's Soldier Boy. We didn't have Soldier Boy previously, you know?
Yep.
What do we have to watch this week upcoming? We'll see another episode of Boys, another episode of Ms. Marvel, another episode for All Mankind. Okay, Pete.
All right.
Have we touched all of the topics for the day?
We have. We've touched on all the TV shows we're watching. We're going to continue watching those shows. We're going to give you, I think, a much more comprehensive view on Obi-Wan after the season ends on
let's have a big
Wednesday.
Breakdown. Let's have a big breakdown.
And we're going to have a breakdown of the season, and we'll tell you what went right, what went wrong, and what could have fixed any of things that needed to be fixed.
Yep. And let's also see if we can find something new that's been released. I mean, we watched Hustle. We reviewed that on Netflix. Let's see what else new is out there that we can get into as well.
I agree. And if any of your listeners have any questions, comments, concerns, if you have any ideas of what we should be reviewing, aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com or tweet at us at F&S Podcast.
Oh, yeah. We need some good tweets. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Guys.
Pete, as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ethan.
Have a lovely week, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.